Good morning and thank you for joining us for State of Texas. I'm Josh Hinkle. Just days before the legislature convenes in Austin, a Central Texas lawmaker unveils what could be the most controversial bill of the session. Republican Lois Kolkhorst has filed the Texas Privacy Act. It's better known as the bathroom bill because it requires people to use the bathroom assigned to the gender they were born with, not necessarily the one they identify with. Senator Kolkhorst says the bill has three specific parts. First, Senate Bill 6 throws out local rules and lets business owners decide their own policy for dressing rooms, showers, and bathrooms. Second, government buildings and schools will be required to only let people use bathrooms of their, quote, biological sex. And third, the bill would make the penalties for breaking those rules tougher by upping all crimes by 1 degree. It's one of the most anticipated and controversial ideas before state lawmakers who begin their work on Tuesday. KXAN political reporter Phil Prazen has a closer look.
Shame, 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 shame. Signs of a controversial legislative session as protesters began chanting before the bill was even filed.
We know it's going to be a tough fight. The forces of fear and misinformation will pull out all the stops.
At a press conference, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick said the Texas Privacy Act would expand to every public building. Author of the bill, State Senator Lois Kolkhorst said with limited exceptions for emergencies, parents, and others, the bill would require school students to use the bathroom of the gender they were born with. If a district goes against it, the Attorney General would dole out a civil penalty.
Are we going to have bathroom police? No. What this is it allows an individual who feels uncomfortable to report that.
We kind of expected this would be coming. I mean,
AISD Board President Kendall Pace says every school in the district has a single occupancy stall just in case, and says this is a solution in search of a problem.
I think this will end up creating more stress and strife and discord than any problem I guess it's trying to solve.
The bill is filed. The fight to make it law has just begun. Phil Prazen, KXAN News.
The bill could require cities like Austin to get rid of local laws aimed at protecting transgender people. Most businesses in Austin fall under the city's non-discrimination ordinance, which requires single-stall bathrooms to be gender neutral. The Texas Privacy Act would supersede that ordinance. Lieutenant Governor Patrick said the act was inspired by a 2015 vote in Houston where voters rejected a non-discrimination ordinance.
And by the way, the economic doom, I'm not aware of any business that didn't move to Houston because of that bill. The Super Bowl is teed up for 5:30 p.m. on February 7th in Houston.
Other states with similar bathroom measures faced boycotts and lost bids for conventions and sporting events. The Texas Association of Business released a study saying the state could lose more than $8 billion if lawmakers pass the bathroom bill. This legislation is something we'll likely be talking about throughout the session. For perspective, we turn to our roundtable of political experts. Lauren McGahee joins us from the Dallas Morning News, and Mike Ward is with the Houston Chronicle. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Thanks. So the bathroom bill, what did you think with the big announcement this week?
For me, it was surprising. I think we've all been waiting to see what the details of the bill were, and it was more limited than I think some of us expected. We thought it might be on the scope of what they passed in North Carolina, which really went out of its way to make sure that cities could not pass local laws that prevented discrimination against a broad range of people in the LGBT community. And this one was much more limited. That said, the business community says the downside is more about how it makes the state look and what its effect on the state's reputation might be. So regardless of how limited it is or not, they're still opposed to it.
You know, kind of what are those predictions? What's the business community really expecting to happen?
What the business community seems to expect to happen is that some version of this bill will get out of the Senate, it'll go to the House, and it'll probably die over there. They don't think that there's any particular momentum in the House to really want to get into this. But even if it comes through the House, it will still face review and possible veto by Governor Abbott, who seems to be fairly lukewarm on it. He said he's going to look at whatever final version they give him, if they give him a final version. But I think this is going to be a lightning rod for a whole lot of criticism during the session, just as it has been in North Carolina, even though this is a different bill. But Virginia is now having a bill that's controversial there, and there's other states. This is part of a national move by conservative Republicans.
Will this overshadow other legislation that might be more important at this time?
Unfortunately, yes. I mean, it's going to, like Mike said, it's going to become a litmus test to kind of allow Dan Patrick and other more far-right conservatives weed people out that they say aren't conservative enough. And there are so many other issues on the plate this year. Public school finance, reform of the Child Protective Services unit, which is ailing, to say the least, that, you know, this is going to suck a lot of the air out of the room over the course of the next, you know, few months, and I think people are kind of girding themselves for that.
What does it say to have Senator Kolkhorst be the one that is behind this legislation? Was she kind of chosen to lead this fight for a reason? What do you think?
This thing was originally called the Transgender Bathroom Bill. Then it became the Women's Privacy Act, and now it's the Texas Privacy Act. But among the senators, they generally had agreed that you needed a woman to carry this, because at one point it was framed as we got to keep men out of women's restrooms. You know, though this will be controversial without a doubt, there's a number of other items on the legislative agenda that will be potentially just as controversial. Sanctuary cities, school choice or vouchers, whatever you want to call that. And in years when the budget is very tight and the legislature is facing a shortfall, a lot of these really hot button issues kind of tend to tone it down just a little bit, because legislators get focused on money, and the budget is money, and how much money is going to their districts. And so there's some belief that there's a lot of these bills that are being run this time because the budget is going to be short, and so they may shoot through at some level in some form because the budget is going to take a lot of the time.
You mentioned, you know, the other big topics that will be coming up, CPS being one of them. I know that they just released the mental health report from the interim committee this past week. Are those things going to be some of the first things that they talk about during the session?
Yeah, I mean, it takes a while for them to get going,
Right.
So, you know, we're going to be probably into the end of February before we really see anything really start. But yeah, the House has made it clear that mental health care reform is something they really want to focus on. Public school finance is something that House Speaker Joe Straus wants to focus on. Not so much a priority in the Senate. Mike said school vouchers is kind of the watchword there. So I think it's going to be a while before you see the real political jockeying over these issues start, but CPS, public schools, in whatever form that issue might come up. The budget, definitely with oil revenues down, there's a lot less money to go around for the same amount or even more issues. There's going to be a lot of higher education affordability discussions happening, so it's going to be a busy session, definitely.
No doubt.
It's often been said that the legislature's like having a circus come to town, and as the show continues, the momentum builds to a finale, which in this case will be sometime around 140 days.
But I think we can, something that we're probably happy about and that we can at least say we're pretty sure of, is that Governor Greg Abbott does not want a special session. So we hope that, you know, once the regular session is over, it's over. So anything they didn't finish in those days, Abbott has said, that's your time to do your job, you know, don't push us into the summer, because that's when everyone needs to go home and get back to their regular lives.
Very different from his predecessor.
Yes.
Yeah. Any surprise predictions for the next 5 months?
Oh, I mean, you never know what's going to happen. Last session, it was, you know, all of a sudden guns were this huge thing that was so time-consuming, and there was kind of the bathroom bill of its age. But there's always an issue that comes out that it comes out of left field, and you're like, where did that come from? And I have no predictions. I don't really, I think the elder statesman should probably take that.
Well, the one prediction that I can make is that when the session's over with, the House and the Senate and the governor are all going to declare victory.
Yep.
That's true.
We'll hold you to that, Mike.
Okay.
Thank you guys for being here. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Thank you.
Ahead on State of Texas, a judge delays the decision on the state law requiring fetal remains to be buried or cremated. But one state already has a similar law. We'll look at its impact.
I served 4 years with a Republican president, 8 years with a Democrat president. I'm way excited about getting back to the Republican president.
And Congress goes back to work with a different perspective, how Donald Trump could change the outlook for the Texas delegation. A federal judge once again pushed back the start date of the state's fetal remains burial rule. The regulation requires hospitals and abortion clinics to either cremate or bury fetal tissue. Right now, that tissue can be treated as medical waste. The rule was supposed to take effect in December, but Judge Sam Sparks delayed it pending a legal challenge. Sparks said he would issue his ruling on January 27th. We wanted to know about what would happen if the state's new fetal remains rule does take effect. KXAN investigator Kevin Schwaller found Texas is largely venturing into new territory.
Advocates speaking out against the state's new fetal burial rule say it's unconstitutional.
It takes what has to be an intimate, personal, private moment between a woman, her doctor, and her family deciding what do we do in this case, inserting the state's viewpoint.
We found Arkansas is one of the few places with a law similar to the regulations now at issue in federal court.
Often those remains were mixed in with the rest of the medical waste and sterilized and disposed of in landfills. And personally, I have a huge issue with that.
Arkansas State Representative Kim Hammer sponsored what is now an Arkansas law requiring fetal remains to be buried, cremated, or released to a patient. It covers abortion clinics and hospitals. Hammer says he also worked with the Hospital Association in Arkansas.
As far as any financial hardships to the parents, there is none. Because the hospitals absorb that cost.
Hammer was not familiar with the exact cost to hospitals in his state. He says the law in Arkansas has not faced a legal challenge. Still, Texas and Arkansas aren't directly comparable. The Arkansas legislature passed the burial law in that state. In Texas, the federal court case is over state health department rules. The scale of the changes is also different in each state. Texas had 41 abortion clinics a few years ago. That number dropped to about 19 after the HB2 abortion restrictions passed. Arkansas has just one provider licensed to perform abortions. For State of Texas, I'm Kevin Schwaller.
We checked. Georgia also has a similar law. However, it only applies to abortions, not miscarriages. A court upheld provisions of a similar law in Indiana this past summer. Coming up, Texans on President-elect Trump's cabinet list make some big business decisions. The major moves to respond to conflict of interest concerns. Plus,
that's a sobering kind of a thought that the things we're voting on could actually become law and could actually be impacting constituents.
The Texas delegation in Congress prepares for big changes and big influences as they start work in Washington. Former Texas Governor Rick Perry is gearing up for confirmation hearings as he prepares to become Energy Secretary in the Trump administration. Late last month, Perry resigned from the Board of Energy Transfer Partners. That's the Dallas pipeline company behind the controversial Dakota Access Pipeline. Critics had cited Perry's links to the company as a potential conflict of interest. The former governor met with several senators last week ahead of his confirmation hearings. Texan Rex Tillerson made a similar move to avoid conflict of interest concerns. The Secretary of State nominee stepped down as ExxonMobil CEO on New Year's Eve. He also said he'll put his nest egg from the company in a trust if he's confirmed. Tillerson is expected to receive more than $180 million in ExxonMobil shares over the next decade. But it's Tillerson's business deals with Russia that seem to be raising the most concern on Capitol Hill. Those deals were part of the conversation when Tillerson met with Senator Ben Cardin last week. He's the ranking member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Cardin says that Congress needs to know more about Tillerson's deals with Russia.
Russia is not a friend of the United States. We have serious concerns about Russia. I think that's a strong bipartisan message that you're going to hear during the confirmation process. Obviously, he did business with Russia. He was able to get things done there, and those relationships will be subject to questioning during the confirmation hearings.
And it's not just Democrats questioning Tillerson's deals with Russia. Republican Lindsey Graham raised his concerns last week on CNN.
He'll have a hard time getting my vote because it's clear. Again, you don't have to be Sherlock Holmes. What bothers me is that President-elect Trump seems to get the Chinese for what they are. The Iranian agreement is bad. He understands that. He understands the threat we face from ISIL. And he understands we can't let the North Koreans build an ICBM to attack our homeland. When it comes to Russia, he seems to have a blind spot, and I'm completely perplexed because the Russians are undermining democracy throughout the entire world.
The bipartisan concern over Russian influence has raised the possibility that Tillerson might not get past the committee confirmation hearings that lead to a vote on the Senate floor. The meetings come on the same week that the 115th Congress started its session in Washington. It comes just 17 days before Donald Trump begins his presidency. Our Anna Wiernicki went to D.C. to catch up with a few Texas lawmakers. She found they're expecting big changes.
With the new year brings a new session.
The House will come to order.
435 congressmen and women convened Tuesday morning in Washington. The Texas delegation welcomed a fresh face, Republican Jody Arrington from Lubbock. But it's another new face that have some lawmakers breathing a sigh of relief.
I've served 4 years with a Republican president, 8 years with a Democrat president. I'm way excited about getting back to the Republican president.
Midland Republican Representative Mike Conaway says with Donald Trump in charge, more legislation will now have the chance of passing.
That's a sobering kind of a thought that the things we're voting on could actually become law and could actually be impacting constituents.
Right now, we're still learning who the counterparts are going to be. Will everybody get confirmed?
But before Texans can get down to business, Representative Will Hurd says there's still a few more logistical matters to take care of.
So while the House and the Senate are ready to get to action, we're still, the executive branch is going to be a little bit behind because they have to go through populating, 4,000 positions.
Anna Wiernicki for State of Texas.
Texas Democrats in Congress say they're ready to get to work, but they'll be outnumbered by their Republican colleagues. Texas has 36 members in Congress. This year, 25 of them are Republicans and 11 are Democrats. Term limits for Congress are a big part of Donald Trump's promise to drain the swamp in D.C. Now one of Trump's former rivals is leading the fight to make it happen. Texas Senator Ted Cruz proposed a constitutional amendment to limit how many terms a member of Congress can serve. His plan would limit senators to 2 6-year terms and House members to 3 2-year terms. A similar measure failed in 2012. It's not easy to pass a constitutional amendment either. First, the proposal has to pass both houses of Congress. Then it has to be ratified by 3/4 of the state legislatures before it can become law. In case you're curious, the last constitutional amendment passed in 1992. It set rules for salaries for members of Congress. Thank you once again for joining us for State of Texas. An update on your news and weather is next. And stay tuned for Meet the Press coming up at 9. I'm Josh Hinkle. Have a great day.